Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. This video we're going to be looking at, what is Projectivism? Now, Projectivism is a meta-ethical position about morality, loosely based on the work of David Hume, but the name is credited to Simon Blackburn. Quickly, a meta-ethical position is a position about what the kind of thing a moral judgment or right or wrong is, not an ethical question, which is more about what is actually right or wrong of these particular choices. What should you do, as opposed to what kinds of things are ethics? That's a meta-ethical position. Simply, this has to do with the causal nature of moral judgments. What is the process that leads you to form the belief that something is morally wrong? For many cognitivists, this might be saying that you're identifying something out in the world that is a property of wrongness. You're seeing it, you're saying that's what that is, but you're just identifying a property that already exists in the world. Whereas for the projectivist, you are projecting your own ideas or values onto the world and using that to attribute morality. The morality doesn't exist independent of you, an observer. Think of it like this. When you see a green apple and form the belief, this apple is green, one generally thinks that your belief is caused by some property of the apple, namely greenness, that there's some objective fact of the world out there that the apple is green, that you're simply identifying with your belief. You're not using your own opinions about what colors are to say, this apple is green, but someone else might disagree with me. You are identifying some objective property about the apple. However, if you taste an apple and form the belief this apple is tasty, one generally would think that this is caused by you projecting your ideas about food onto the world, as something that's tasty to someone is disgusting to someone else. Someone might really like bitter apples and say, that's tasty, whereas someone else might say, oh, that's disgusting. The bitterness might be a real property of the apple, but whether or not it's tasty requires some level of your own value judgment being placed onto that apple. It's not objective whether a bitter apple is tasty or not. The question is, which of these categories do moral beliefs fit into? When you see something that you believe is immoral, is it because you are accurately identifying a property of the event, or is it because you are projecting your beliefs or values about morality onto the world? As the name suggests, projectivists think the latter. They think that when you make moral judgments, you are projecting your beliefs onto the world. It's not that you're picking out some characteristic of the world that's already out there that anyone could pick out. Broadly, there are three kinds of projectivism that we're going to delve into here. The first is the error theory, which is proposed by J.L. Mackie. Basically, this states that individuals that make moral statements think that they are correct, but they're simply mistaken. They're trying to make a statement about the world, but these fail to refer, as no such properties actually exist. When someone says, that is wrong, they think that they are attributing a real property of wrongness to something out there in the world. However, they're mistaken. There's no real property of wrongness. They're just attributing something that is deeply held in themselves and accidentally saying that it's wrong, accidentally believing that it's a property about the world, when in fact it's a property about themselves and their own belief set. This is the same as statements about Santa Claus from someone that honestly believes in Santa Claus. If they say, Santa Claus came down my chimney last night, they are trying to say something real about the world, but one of their objects fails to refer, namely Santa Claus fails to refer because there's no such thing as Santa Claus. They're trying to refer something that exists, but because it in fact does not exist, their statement fails to refer. Okay? So that's the error theory. They're trying to make real statements, but they are mistaken. The second form of projectivism is kind of a Lockean form that's based very loosely on the works of John Locke. It claims that moral properties are real, but that they are secondary properties that are determined both by the world and our perception of it. This can be understood broadly in terms of dispositions. Think of it like this. An event is not evil in and of itself, but rather that event has the disposition to make humans form the belief that event is evil. So there is some level of, there's some fact about the world out there, but it's not that we're identifying evil, it's that we're identifying that event has the general disposition to make me think that it is evil. Absent the observer, it's not evil, it simply has a disposition to make an observer think it is evil. And the third position is known as emotivism or expressivism. This is simply the position that statements about morality do not express actual propositions about the world, that X is a Y or P is a Q, but rather an individual's feelings about the world. When you say X is wrong, some event X is wrong, kicking puppies is wrong, what you mean is that I don't like kicking puppies, or boo kicking puppies. I don't like those things. It's not saying that it is actually morally wrong that there's some property about the world. Really what you mean by that, if you were reflective and thought about it, is just, I don't really like that. But in our turn of language and our turn of phrase, it comes out as attributing a property that doesn't exist. Check out my video on emotivism for more on this position specifically. Now, there are a range of objections which might be leveled at projectivists. One might raise the issue that this does not allow us to make real moral critiques of others, simply to express our disapproval of their actions. We can't actually say that there's some fact of the matter that this particular action is wrong. Rather, all we can say is that based on my value systems, I'm projecting wrongness onto that. Or, in the Lockean version, perhaps, that there's a disposition of that event to make me feel that it's wrong. Now, the projectivist to that also can, of course, say that, well, just because that it makes it hard for you to make moral judgments doesn't mean that we're incorrect. It just means that it's a matter of fact that you can't make those kinds of judgmental moral judgments. But there could be a back and forth there. One might also be worried about dispositions when there is disagreement as to whether a particular event is moral or not. It seems odd to say that a particular event has a disposition to make some people judge it as immoral and some people judge it as moral. That doesn't seem to be really what we're talking about. And unfortunately, there's a lot of events that many people would think are straightforwardly moral or immoral, but there's at least one person that thinks that it's not, or there's a small minority of people that think that that event is not moral. There are real moral disagreements about the world, and so it doesn't seem to make sense that that's a property of the object that causes that disagreement. Rather, that seems to be a property of us. So saying that the property of the object is simply a disposition to cause people to feel a certain way doesn't seem to map on to the way that moral disagreements work. The difference seems to be in the people's heads, not in the object itself. And one might even say that you have a particular event that most people consider moral for a long period of time, and then at some point in time, people decide to start judging it as immoral, and from that point on, people judge it as immoral. Does it really make sense to say that the object or that event changed, or does it make more sense to say that people's opinions changed? Does it make sense to say that there's some property of that object, namely the disposition of it to cause people to believe differently about morality changed, or that people's opinions about morality or ideals of morality changed? For the emotivist, the challenge is that it just seems like people are not expressing disapproval when they make moral statements. They seem to be trying to express things about the world, not about just their feelings, even if they're failing to do so. Check out my video on emotivism for more on that position and objections to it. What do you think? Do you judge things to be moral or immoral because of some fact about the world that you're identifying, or just some fact about your own personal beliefs? Leave your answers in the comments below. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.